Despite the COVID-19 pandemic disrupting almost all professional events, on July 23rd, Legal Plus and L2 Icon jointly managed to hold the fully virtual Construction Claims and ADR Conference 2021. The conference was participated by 44 moderators and speakers from 9 jurisdictions. With such a star-studded lineup, we had high hopes the conference would be a success, and true enough, the conference achieved its target by seeing an incredible 1,534 registrations. Not only that, the conference also set a new record in the Malaysian Book of Records for the longest non-stop virtual construction and ADR conference, when the conference ended after a 12-hour marathon at 9 p.m. Although the conference ended on July 23rd, its impact is still ongoing, and it is why we organized this charity premiere to let the conference see the light of day again, and at the same time to show compassion and empathy in our community. Let's watch the show together. It was this experience that became the spark for us wanting to help more people. We approached charitable organizations that help feed the poor, needy, homeless, orphans, abandoned, refugees, mentally disabled children and adults, the handicapped, animals, medical care, and help for children's education by providing used laptops and computers. If there is one thing we learned during the course of this initiative, is that there are many good people in our society, and many charitable organizations are going above and beyond to help those around them. For this charity premiere, we have carefully selected 10 charitable organizations, and we implore you to donate. Even a small amount goes a long way for them. 100% of the funds collected will be distributed equally. This initiative also helps raise awareness, the work these organizations do, and the people they have an impact on. This is the very reason why we are organizing this charity premiere, and with your help, we can help those who help others. The first speaker tonight is Christian Swift, who is the Operations Director at +3 Consultants, followed by Peter Hiebler, who is a Director at Turner Commercial Advisory Services, and then Serene Hugh, who is a Partner at Harrell & Lamb Partnership. Without further ado, let the show begin.
Good afternoon, everybody. This afternoon, I'm going to be speaking a little bit about the latest developments in assessing concurrent delay, a subject which is very prevalent and common in today's construction industry. Let me just share my slides with you. Okay. Okay, so there still isn't any standard approach in assessing extensions of time or delay damages where there is concurrent delays. There's been substantial decisions over the last couple of decades at least by the courts, but whilst those do appear in the first instance to bring new guidance on concurrent delay, these decisions are often actually only applicable to the specific circumstances and the facts around each individual case. So they may not actually be applicable to a specific scenario that you may be looking at in terms of concurrent delay. So care just needs to be taken as far as that's concerned. So the assessment of concurrent delay still remains subjective, and quite often it still gives rise to differences of opinion and actually disputes all in itself. There still actually isn't a definition, a standard definition of concurrent delay. There are some quite common or popular ones, which I'll go through. But as you'll see, there is no standardization of even the definition. So one of the more popular ones that's been used in several court cases, legal cases, is one by John Marin, QC, where he defines concurrent delay as the period of project overrun which is caused by two or more effective causes of delay, which are of approximate equal causative potency. Another definition, which is quite popular and well known, also is the one by the Society of Construction Law, the delay and disruption protocol. And that one states it as being the occurrence of two or more delay events at the same time, one an employer's risk event and another a contractor's risk event, and the effects are felt at the same time. So this definition requires the delay events to happen and finish at the same time, which, as we'll see a little bit later, is not very common at all. Now, if we look at the United States, they've got a slightly less rigid approach, I would say, in terms of how concurrency is defined. The AACE definition is concurrent delay occurs when there are two or more independent causes of delay during the same time period. So if we have a look at what the definition of true concurrency is where you've got a project's critical path that's impacted by two delay events, one an employer delay event and another a contractor delay event, which start and finish at exactly the same time, have got an equal causative potency, and they both, in their own right, delay the project by the same amount of time. Now, this, I think, as anybody, as most people in the construction industry who assess these type of scenarios and concurrency will find that this actually hardly ever happens. In my experience, I've not yet come across a true concurrent delay scenario, and therefore, arguably, this definition is too narrow and it's somewhat limited in its practical application. What tends to happen much more often is this other example here, which is another example that's given by the Society of Construction Law, whereby a project is impacted by two delay events again, one a contractor's delay event and one an employer's delay event. But the contractor's delay event starts earlier and finishes later than the employer's delay event. And there is merely a period of overlap or concurrent delay, in this example, for 2 weeks, around about the middle of a contractor's delay, or perhaps a parallel delay, as it's sometimes known. So there's actually two different views on how this concurrency should be approached. View number one is that both events are effective causes of delay for that period of overlap, for that 2-week period of overlap, and that the contractor is entitled to extension of time for that period. This view has been supported in earlier English appeal court cases. For example, the Henry Boot versus Malmason Patel case back in 1990. And this approach is quite often known as the Malmason approach. There is another view to this scenario, and that one is the one promoted by the Society of Construction Law, actually, which says that the employer's delay does not actually result in the works being delayed, as the works were already in delay by the contractor. So if you look at this scenario from a purely critical path analysis method, it's evident that the contractor's risk of it actually is the only effective cause of delay. And because that's the contractor's delay, there is no entitlement to extension of time. So these views have gone back and forth in cases that have come before the courts. For example, a relatively recent case is one of Saga Cruises versus Fincantieri Spa. In this particular case, Saga Cruises was the employer. They're the operator of a cruise ship operation, a tour ship operation, and they engaged Fincantieri Spa, an Italian shipbuilder, to renovate one of their cruise liners. What happened during the course of this contract is that there were substantial delays by Fincantieri, by the contractor, but also there were variations introduced by the employer during the course of the works, and especially towards the back end of the program. So the courts actually reviewed all of the previous authorities on concurrent delay, and they concluded that an important distinction needs to be drawn between an event which would have caused delay, but because there was already a pre-existing delay, has no delaying effect, so therefore does not give rise to extension of time. and that is distinct from an event which actually causes delay, but it does not give rise to an extension of time. So this is similar to, in line with view 2 that we looked at a little bit earlier, where the contractor's delay event overshadows the employer's delay event. So therefore, even though there may be a period of concurrency, actually does not give rise to extension of time. So in this particular instance, the court did find in favor of the employer and found that there was no concurrent delay. So the effects of this particular judgment, it narrows the definition of concurrent delay back towards the stricter approach that we looked at a little bit earlier. However, it seems to contradict the widely accepted Mull-Mason approach. It has been criticized. It's come under criticism for its overly simplistic approach, and also that the application of causation is unclear, and also that the employer may benefit and backload variations. For example, if the contractor instructs variations at the back end of the contract, where a contractor is in delay, then the contractor may get the benefit of those variations without having to award any extension of time. The pendulum has swung back again in the other direction. This is a very, very recent case. It is a Canadian case, and in this case, this is by Schindler Elevator Corporation versus Walsh Construction Company. Schindler was appointed as a subcontractor to Walsh Construction in what I believe was a residential building, and there the two competing views came into view with each other, into competition, so to speak. And Schindler's expert witness, he was of the traditional view. He took the view that true concurrency requires two co-critical and two controlling activities that are parallel in time and identical in duration. So pretty much the traditional or strict approach to concurrency. However, the court didn't actually agree with that view. They preferred Granier's view, who was the expert for the construction company, for Walsh Construction. And his view is more in line with the earlier view 1, the less strict approach, which basically says that it's not necessary for the independent cause of delay to occur at exactly the same time for them to be considered concurrent. Indeed, it's rare that concurrent delays start and end at the same time. Concurrent delays are more commonly experienced as overlapping events. And I think as I think most people that actually assess concurrent delays in big complicated construction projects will agree that this is really what does happen a lot of the time. So Granier's approach, of course, is more realistic. It's likely to lead to a fair and just result because they felt that any other method would result unfairly in holding one party solely responsible for all of the delays on the project. So the effects of this particular judgment are that apart from us, the pendulum swinging back to a less strict approach, it's quite often unrealistic to actually expect a precise quantification of responsibility for delay. Overlapping events on construction projects often make such measure virtually impossible. And that the courts may prefer to split the responsibility for overall delay to prevent one party being held 100% responsible for the time and for the cost. Just as a note, the apportionment of delay is something that happens in Scottish jurisdictions, but it's not one that is preferred in English jurisdictions at this stage. Another development which is starting to come about is that there's an increasing popularity in incorporating provisions excluding the contractor's entitlement to extensions of time where there are concurrent delays. And this was tested in a relatively recent case, North Midlands Building versus Sidon Homes, where in that contract there was a pretty standard clause whereby the contractor is entitled to an extension of time if it's been delayed by a relevant event that the employer has got the risk for. However, that particular provision was modified basically to reflect that if that relevant event or that delay caused by the relevant event, if it was concurrent with another event which the contractor is responsible for, then there will be no extension of time. And the court actually upheld that, that provision in the contract and stated that that provision is enforceable and it's not contrary to the prevention principle, presuming on the basis that the parties had agreed to that as a bargain between the parties at contract stage. So the effects of this particular principle or this judgment is that the employer will be able to recover delay damages for periods of concurrent delay, even though it may have caused some of the at least some of the delays to the completion period. And this is in conflict with the approach taken by the Society of Construction Law Protocol. So, by way of conclusion, there still is no preferred approach to assessing extensions of time and delay damages where there is concurrent delay. It remains a very controversial and complicated topic. So the key to assessing concurrent delays is to be able to break down the overall delay into its component parts and look at those from a rational, logical point of view in order to be able to determine the actual delay caused by the parties and allocate associated risk accordingly. The analysis as to whether concurrency does exist or not, it must be based on a common sense approach. It should not be overly theoretical. It must make sense. And also, one needs to factor in for a margin of imprecision inherent in delay analysis. I think, as most practitioners will appreciate, delay analysis is not an exact science. It doesn't give you standard results to the day or to a couple of days. There is an element of imprecision in it. But however, where concurrency is established, the prevention principle should be respected. And the contractor should be awarded extensions of time where the employer's delay has concurrently delayed the project. But however, in terms of additional costs, the contractor should not be entitled to recover any additional costs unless it can actually prove that it would have incurred those costs in any event. So no costs in most cases where there is concurrent delay. I would like to say thank you for having been invited to this seminar, and that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Topics